Welcome to the Asian Supermarket. I'm your host Christina from America.
And I'm Carmen from Australia.
Our special guest this week is Sevinna, a friend of ours who spent her childhood in Shenzhen, China, before moving to California at 11. In this episode, we discuss the concept of the 1.5 generation and the different situations we face when adapting to life in a different country.
So grab your favorite icy cold drink as we chat together with our guest in episode 8.
Welcome to episode 8 this week on Asian Supermarket. So today we have a special guest with us. Her name is Sevinna. She was born in Shenzhen, China, and she's lived in China, the US, Korea, and Netherlands. So she's actually worked in the Netherlands, and she's currently working in Southern California as a project manager at a creative agency, and she manages branding and web development projects. So welcome, Sevinna, to our show.
Thank you.
Why don't you guys talk about how you know each other?
So me and Sevinna, we met in college. We were in the same dance team. And then she's been a really close friend of mine, like an older sister to me for all these years. So I'm really glad to have her on in this show. We usually like to start with the icebreaker. So Sevinna, what is your favorite dish to cook?
Recently, it will be risotto. My friend actually gave me his family recipe, and he described it really well. He called it a patient art because you really need to stir the rice and the stock nonstop for at least 45 minutes if you want to get that creamy consistency.
You're born in Shenzhen, right? So is there any interesting food facts related to there that you know about?
Well, Shenzhen is in the Canton province in the south. So we really pride ourselves with like great fresh seafood. I think one of my favorite dishes is my mom's steamed fish. It's just any white fish with ginger, soy sauce, onions. It's delicious. I don't know how to make it, but it is a dish that I always get when I visit home.
Making me hungry. Well, I guess that's a cool fun fact we could lead on to. So Shenzhen used to be a fishing village. It's one of the first special economic zones in China, and it's actually known for the world's 4th tallest building, the Ping An IFC.
Why don't you tell us more about your work, about yourself? So you were born in China, and then how old were you when you moved?
Well, I immigrated from Shenzhen to California when I was 12. So I think by definition, that is a 1.5 generation immigrant. I came here during the middle of middle school, and I went to college in Orange County. After graduating, I moved to the Bay Area for a year, and then I decided that I need more of international experience. So I moved to the Netherlands, stayed there for almost 4 years before I returned home. So yeah, I've been to quite some places.
I guess maybe it'd be nice for us to explain. So the difference between a 1.5 generation compared to other gen. Definition of a 1.5 generation person is having moved to a new country between the ages of 11 to 17. So Carmen, you would not be considered 1.5.
No.
Right? Yeah, you would.
I moved when I was 8, so I guess I would be maybe 1.75. And your second gen. So we have all the variations from second gen up to 1.5.
The gradient.
Yeah, the gradient.
How is it like living as a 1.5 generation person in different countries? Like compared to me as a second gen, right? Similarities, differences, living abroad versus the motherland. Maybe you could kind of explain culturally wise.
I am never quite 100% of where I am, right? There's a constant identity puzzle because whenever I am in a group in America, then I never feel like I'm 100% American. And then vice versa, when I revisit my hometown, China, people would kind of call out, oh, you dress differently or you talk differently. So sometimes I play it to my advantage, but sometimes it's difficult to not understand the context or some of the topics that the group that I was with. But I try to embrace it. It's nice to be able to, speak the language in both countries. I am very fortunate to be able to, still communicate with my grandparents. So yeah, I like to think of it as like me being globally aware, and be able to kind of go in and out of different situations pretty smoothly.
So usually with our previous guests, we actually discussed, like, we had a few guests who have actually moved overseas with their families at a young age. And I like to ask people, like, did you move to an area where there was quite, populated with Asian people, or were you more in like a Western community? Like, did you have a lot of external influences?
Yeah, I think moving to Southern California, it's definitely easier relatively
Yeah.
to some other parts of the US. I definitely spent a good years, just being next to Asian supermarkets, restaurants. My parents still speak Chinese to me at home. My school is like more than 50% Asian, or high school at least. So I guess I didn't have a intense culture shock as some other people might have. My first experience with like, me being a minority, it's like when I moved to the Netherlands. Obviously, it's predominantly Europeans, Caucasians. So, but by then I have already been in the US for so long, like language barrier is no longer there. So adjusting to that environment was actually also pretty easy for me.
Oh, no, that's a very interesting topic, though. Can you speak more about the language barrier? Because did you already pick up, like, start learning English when you were preparing to immigrate over, or was it something that you just had to get exposed to when you came?
Speaking was very limited when I was in Shenzhen.
Yeah.
We did have English classes where we learned, grammars and writing essays. But yeah, I definitely had a very hard time in the first like 2, 3 years after I moved to the States. I had to go to Saturday English schools. I had a lot of majority of my class is still like ESL students, so English as second language.
Uh-huh.
So they speak Chinese. So I also didn't learn as fast as I could. But I think it just took time, right? Eventually, I joined a dance team where majorities of people were Americans. So that really opened up more exposure for me to practice my speaking, my, mannerism, just
Yeah.
like a normal American quote unquote environment for me to practice in.
Interesting. Then when you were in the Netherlands, do you feel like you had more like Asian influences or American influences that you brought over?
I would say more US influence, just because my prime like development years, like after 12, from 12 all the way to 23, I spent in the US. I think that's when you develop most of your personality, like the learning, the critical thinking skills. So when I moved to the Netherlands, that's what I brought with me. I mean, that doesn't exclude the fact that, I met plenty of Chinese friends in the Netherlands. So it's always helpful to, kind of reconnect with some people from my roots.
Yeah. Was there a big culture shock you saw there? Like something very unique to Netherlands that none of us would know about?
There's a stereotype that people tell you about when you first move there is that Dutch people are very blunt, very, for some people, it might be seen as like rude. Because I think Americans' stereotype is that people are super nice, right? Sometimes even to a very superficial level. Like the way people greet you at the shop here is like very welcoming, very warm. Whereas over there, it's just like if you don't ask for help, maybe people won't even approach you. But that's just a stereotype that a lot of people kind of exaggerate because a lot of the Dutch people that I met are just as welcoming. But that's something that I think people would like talk about.
Then how about like the work and educational hangout lifestyle there compared to here?
In the Netherlands, usually you need to schedule things in advance. Like spontaneous meetups is very unusual. But I think for me, because I lived in Amsterdam Center and also I had a lot of expat friends who are very eager to meet up without prior planning. So I didn't have a lot of issue with, like having a beer after work or going to a yoga class after, a long day of work as well. But in general, I think like the entertainment, hobbies within like Dutch people versus US, I don't think it's really shockingly different.
Did you gravitate more towards like Asian people when you were over there? Is there much of an Asian community over in Amsterdam? Or
There's quite decent in Amsterdam. It's the capital of the country.
Yeah.
So if you do want to find like Chinese food, that's where you want to go.
Yeah.
But obviously compared to Southern California, it's no like nothing comparable. There is a tiny Chinatown. On Lunar New Year, there's actually like lion dancing performance, which I already found pretty shocking. So I feel like I wasn't kept away from a lot of the Asian things that I missed when I was there. So very fortunate.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you feel like you brought any European influences back to the US now?
Maybe the directness. Like I think I am a little bit more outspoken in like both work and personal life. That is a good thing because I feel like sometimes I'm always like not setting good boundaries. Like you're just trying to be nice, or you want to say yes to all the invites or any help that you can offer. But now it's like, oh, okay, you just need to learn when to say no. So that's something, I don't think it's like European specific. It could be like just maturing and aging.
Yeah.
I miss biking. That's something that I cannot bring back per se unless I move to a more bike friendly US city. But yeah, I feel like some of these like prioritizing work-life balance, those are some of the things that I would love to continue doing.
Have you ever felt the need to like not really change yourself, but maybe like push yourself to adapt more to like Western countries, being someone who has grown up, who did spend your childhood in Asia, hide certain aspects of yourself, I guess, to make yourself be more accepted socially? Did you ever feel that kind of pressure?
Sure, the first time, like the immigration process from China to the US was definitely harder. Not just the language barrier, but I was a much more soft-spoken person. I am never the girl who would raise her hand to answer a teacher's question. So I definitely needed to learn how to be, more outspoken, kind of standing up for myself and just like be a better public speaker, be a better, performer. Dancing helped. I don't think that's hiding a part of me. It's more like a development of my own personality. So I think it's essential to try to adapt to a new environment, to learn the language. I think I also know friends from middle school who just like stick to the same group of friends and they never really want to venture out. It's a very personal choice, but I personally don't think it's beneficial for the long run.
Because for me, I like to ask that question because personally, I don't know if you were always quiet, but for me personally, when I moved from Singapore to Australia, when I was in Singapore, I was like a very noisy, outgoing kind of person, and I would always like raise my hand, like make trouble in class. But then when I came here, I guess because Singaporeans have an accent, and I was like made fun of for my accent a few times. And then because of the way I spoke and the way I pronounced things, like people would say things. And I know that it's, as little kids, it's not in a harmful way. I mean, it's not intentionally trying to be mean or anything. It's just like they're pointing out a difference. But as a child, it really damages your confidence. And for me personally, like I really changed my demeanor according to how people like reacted to how I was. And I became really quiet and really reserved. So I was just wondering, like, did you have anything like that where like did you feel like your personality changed at all?
Yeah, I think it's so common, right? Just little things, especially the whole speaking and you sound different, but it takes so much longer to actually adjust how you speak. And as a child, it's like those sort of moments kind of stick to you.
It's just like, I guess it's just something that you go through, growing up. It really strengthens you as a person.
Yeah. And it's also the people who are surrounding you who can encourage you to keep trying. Because I know the worst case is just like you completely shut off and never
Yeah.
step out of that shell again.
I'm curious. Let's. That was such a deep topic. Okay, let's go to something more lighthearted. So, how's
Sure.
the dating lifestyle around the world? Not necessarily, like in China, because you haven't been there for a while, but there's a lot of stereotypes from there. And then, stuff in Europe and stuff here. I know we've talked about, dating life and stuff like that. So, as
Yeah.
a person that's, has this presence in all three parts of the world, you want to give us a little observation you made?
Sure. I mean, China, I never dated there because
Yeah.
I left when I was 12. But growing up with cousins, and like my parents are still very much traditional. They have a very linear thinking of, the past, different stages of relationship and when should happen with whom. I think things are changing, but again, it's safe to say, people would like to get married a little sooner than Europe and US. They think family value is super important. Usually it's not about marrying each other, it's marrying for two families.
Yeah.
Also, the gender roles are very distinct, very clear in China, whereas here it's a lot more fluidity, and there's different gender debates that are currently going on. So I think I do get pressures from especially my grandparents, who are all in China still. They check on me, like what's going on, clock is ticking. It's actually funny that during COVID, when I got a break, because they're like, oh, you can't meet new people, so let's stop asking her.
Yeah.
I'm dating someone now, so everybody is a little bit more relaxed. But yeah, I think about the US, I thought the US is a lot more flexible compared to China. But then after spending more time in Europe, I feel like there's another level of freedom. So I think in the US, it's still very linear. So basically, after you graduate, you fall in love, you get married, you buy a house, you have a kid. That's still very much like common and default. Whereas when I spent my years in Europe, I realized there are so many couples who are already like 3 kids in, but they don't have a house, they never get married or don't even intend to, and that is completely okay, and that's really normal for a lot of them. So I think the first time I heard that, I was kind of like shocked, and then I realized, yeah, it's common. There's trust there. So I feel like that really opened my eyes to different approaches or different possibilities in terms of like activities, like what you do during like a relationship. That's pretty similar. You go out and eat, you meet friends, you travel. Yeah, I don't know if you guys find anything different in like Australia, or like even when you guys study in Korea. I guess that's still very much linear too, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm curious in Singapore and in Australia, how is it like?
I mean, I guess like as Savina said, it's pretty similar everywhere. Like you meet people and then you just like, I mean, in terms of dating, like what you do, it really does vary from person to person. But I think most people do have that desire to have that ideal timeline where it's like, after college, you kind of find a stable job, then you meet someone, and then after that, when you're more stable financially, get married, settle down, and have kids. I guess that is the traditional goal for a lot of people. But I think especially among my friends, I can see that it's not so much of an importance in the younger generation these days, where we prioritize more our careers, I guess, and our happiness in the first place. Whereas instead of like, I'm not sure if this is a very overarching stereotype, but I feel like in Asia, there's a lot of pressure to just kind of get married before a certain age. And there's this like concept of maybe like settling, I guess, like, oh, I'm getting older and, this person is okay. But I think that in Western culture, it's more of like, you have to be really happy with someone to be able to, take that step forward and to move on with them together.
And Savina, do you feel like with the Asian influences, do you feel like you have more pressure settling down in the, Asian perspective? Or do you feel like you're pretty free, liberal, independent? I don't care what my family, anything. I'm not going the traditional path. I do what I want
Yeah.
to do. Like,
If I'm in love, I'm happy.
I feel like in that aspect, like family value and love and like family planning, deep down, I'm actually quite traditional. I mean, I never consider not getting married. Like I also have plenty of Asian friends who know for sure they don't want kids in the future, but that is never like an option in the back of my head. I know like the age and like certain timeline might be a little bit more, flexible. Obviously, it's the most crucial part is finding the right partner to do all those things in the future together. But yeah, my ideal like future I do see kids. I do see, having a house, having, something communal together with another guy. So yeah, I was never the rebellious, like, oh, I'm just gonna be a like independent single woman for life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the strong independent part is great.
yeah.
But yeah, like I never thought like I would be like a bachelorette single girl forever.
No, but I think definitely it depends, person to person. And even for people, you can't really say as well, people always change. Sometimes people might be, the type to be like, oh no, I'm a strong, independent, single person. But if you meet someone, you never know. Or if people who are really into relationships, they might go through a bad experience and then they might be like, no, this is not for me, So I guess as life goes on, people change. And yeah, I think it's good to have an open mind as well. I think a good thing about the Western culture, the Western mentality towards this kind of stuff is that they always have an open mind. And I love how, I really believe in prioritizing happiness first. Like, if you're not happy with someone, then what's the point of wanting to, force a future with them?
Yeah.
Wisdom 101. She always has wisdom fun facts.
No, I mean, it's I think it's really hard in Asia to especially, I don't know, I see a lot of people who are unhappy, but because of the Asian mentality of I guess saving face and things like that, they kind of stay in whatever situation they are in, even though they are not, and I think it's really hard to kind of deal with things like that in Asia, the topics of, separation. But yeah, that's pretty heavy, so let's not go into that.
I mean, you can see it in the dramas, you always see this person's marrying this person because of the business, hierarchy, stuff like that. I mean, I can see from their perspective, right? Probably lifestyle, they match more, but it's just interesting because in America, you don't really see as much of these kind of, it's kind of like you see a lot of CEOs with just students, right? People that don't have their life together. So yeah, I guess it's just cultural background, cultural traditions passed down. Yeah, do you have any other topics or any interesting fun facts, Sevinna? You can, from any of your experiences, because you're probably one of my friends that's been to the most countries in the world. So I feel there must be something you can, share with us.
There are some unique Dutch holidays that I love, that I just never knew existed until I lived there. They actually have King's birthday as a national holiday. So obviously when the king changes, the day will also change. It's not like, President Day in America. It's always set dates. It's actually coming up. It's April 27th. It's a day where there's boat parties. People everywhere wears orange. It's flea markets. So people would just have their own stalls and sell their second-handed home goods or clothes for dirt cheap. I got a scarf, a wool cashmere scarf for 10 cents. And then they also have their kids would perform instruments on the street for a couple of dollars or cents, just as a way to encourage them to do something in the public. So I really like that holiday. Yeah, I think for people who don't like to stay in the city, it's also a great time to like get out of it with like really cheap flights. So I would say that's like one of my favorite like occasions or holidays in the Netherlands. Well, kind of going off of that like whole work-life balance is a lot better in Europe in general. I would say there's just more pay time off. Oh, actually, interestingly, Netherlands has this concept of holiday allowance. It's essentially a 13th month salary pay. So you don't get 12 months pay, like paycheck out of the year. You actually get 13. So you have an additional paycheck that you get as part of your allowance, quote unquote, to take vacation. So I thought that was really, really cool. Yeah, so it's like really encouraged for people to, you know, take time off to spend time with families, go travel. That is something that I definitely see is lacking in China and in the US. It has downsides, right? We can't say that. There's always, you know, people on holiday. So sometimes when people you really want to get things done, you can't because people are always out. So yeah, I think those two things are pretty uniquely Netherlands or maybe Europe.
Did you get to travel around a lot when you were staying in the Netherlands?
Traveled the most during those 4 years. But again, never enough. Like I came back and be like, I haven't been to Croatia or Greece. Like what?
No, it must be hard for you during the pandemic, like not being able to travel.
Yeah, I had like 3 trips planned that all got canceled. But it is what it is.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Sevinna. It was a pleasure talking to you.
For having me.
Join us next week for episode 9 with Long, our Vietnamese American friend who shares his experiences with his culture and his passions and careers in fitness and personal training, as well as writing and podcasting. See you next week!